Okay, I think I will call this meeting to order at 7:03 PM on February 21st, 2022. First order of business is a public hearing on our ESSER 3 funding. I believe Jeff Mahoney is going to enlighten us on this.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Yep. All right. Well, at our December, I'll let a few others chime in there. It's few connecting yet. So at our December 20th meeting, we provided a plan on how the school district would be using ESSER 3 funds, which at this point totals $419,000 and of which we would be using this for the 23-24 school year to help fund the additional 2 counselors that were hired starting in the 21-22 school year. Additionally, these ESSER 3 funds will fund ongoing new technology software costs for Canvas, Zoom, and DocuSign. These personnel and software costs total about $230,000. This leaves $190,000 in ESSER 3 funds. As noticed in December, a portion of the funds would come with restrictions, as they have. Minimally, out of the $419,000, $84,000 will be, or 20%, will have to be used towards the following types of activities: curriculum development, instructional improvement, professional development, social emotional behavioral interventions, or summer learning coordination opportunities and support. The planned focus for the 23-24 school year for the 20% required use of the funds for ESSER 3 would be, at this point, summer learning opportunities for students. This was, again, something I had focused on in December. The remaining $76,000 will be planned to be a combination of the other activities I mentioned, which would be curriculum development, instruction improvement, or professional development, and or social emotional behavioral interventions. The reason for a vagueness of this plan moving forward is, again, we're talking about the 23-24 school year. However, in order to proceed with putting our grant into place by the middle of March, we have to have had a public hearing. This concludes my comments during the public hearing regarding ESSER 3 budget plans. Any public comments or questions?
Jeff, I can confirm that no written comments were submitted for this public hearing. And then I think at this time, we can ask the members of the public who are attending this meeting, if you'd like to register to make any comments regarding the Q&A portion, you can feel free to do so, including your name, address, and I think that actually should be, for this one, that should be sufficient.
Yes.
No one has any questions or comments from the board? We have nothing from the public, Angie?
No one has registered yet. If we can give one more minute.
Okay.
I think Christine had a question. I thought.
I was trying, yes, I do have a question. I was waiting to see if there's anybody on the public side who wanted to ask first. So you were saying that the 76,000 would go towards any of the 5 activities listed above, correct?
Yes, so in our planning over the next year and a half, then we would bring forward more developed plan. Mm-hmm. But by the middle of March, we have to actually submit our general plan for ESSER 3 funds.
And so are you looking for input as to what people think that 76,000 should go forward for?
Well, we certainly can take that. Again, we would put it through our process with our curriculum and teaching and learning department for sure.
Yeah.
But yes, please, Christine.
Well, you know, the amount of money, of course, will dictate what you might use it for. I think with the state of our students' mental health, that the social emotional behavioral interventions to me rises to the top, with the secondary thought of, and I don't know where this would fit in because I think they're interrelated, but you know, helping to push forward some of the I don't know how to say this. You know, thinking back to what we know from what we learned with the pandemic and where the students are, trying to fill in any of the needs for students academically would be, and I know that data would drive that, and a discussion with your teaching and learning group would drive that, but just looking at that list, those come to mind.
That's excellent feedback, and I appreciate that.
Thanks very much, Christine. Anyone else?
Craig, this is Bruce.
Yeah.
And Jeff, my question is, and I'm not sure even you're the one to be able to answer this. Are we starting to get any kind of feelings for how summer school is going to go? Because I'm hoping that we can have something really, you know, pretty vigorous going this summer.
I think we could hold that as, we could bring that for information at the next board meeting, as this is a public hearing related to the ESSER 3 funds. But we can duly note that you'd like to know what our plan is for this coming summer. Would that suffice?
Yeah, that'd be fine. And I know it's very early in the game, so I don't expect that. A whole lot of information yet.
Oh, it's not early in the game for this summer. It doesn't feel like summer at the moment, but so.
Well, yeah, let's attack that as a discussion item moving forward. Is Melissa spearheading the summer school stuff?
Yes, so we could certainly bring a report
Yeah,
at another meeting.
that'd be great. That'd be great. Is that okay, Bruce? Okay. Anyone else?
We have had no one else from the public register using Q&A.
All right, then I believe we shall move on to
So you'd be
consent.
closing the public hearing.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
I declare it closed at 7:08 on my time. Okay, consent agenda items. The consent agenda items contain the minutes from the February 2nd, 2022 Board of Education meeting and public hearing. It also contains our latest financial transactions and 2 professional and 6 co-curricular staffing recommendations. Let's see. Okay, they would request approval of general fund vouchers 177075 through 177272 and 291533 through 291583, and purchasing card transactions dated 12/21/21 through 1/20/22. Some professional staffing recommendations and co-curricular staffing. Not necessary for vote, so I would move to accept the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Public comments. We have a number of public comments this evening. And I believe we will start with Dr. Anderson.
Craig, would
All
you?
right.
Oh, I'm sorry,
My
Mayor.
first public comment is from. Am I muted?
No, I hear you.
Oh, I hear you.
Right. Okay. My first public comment is from Shannon Elf. 6114 Overlook Drive. And it deals with masks optional. Starting March 1st, please vote to make masks optional in all McFarland schools. My second one is from Amy Kroll, 5927 Ox Hollow Drive. And again, it deals with optional masking and in-person school board meetings. To the school board and administration, with Dane County lifting the mask mandate March 1st, please vote to make it mask optional in all of our schools. Wanakee, Belleville, Middleton Cross Plains, Mount Horeb, and Edgewood are all going mask optional. Please also offer school board meetings in person moving forward. Thank you, Amy Kroll. My next is from Jeff Kroll, 5927 Ox Hollow Drive. Again, it deals with mask optional. Good evening, McFarland School Board and administrators. I wanted to write in to voice my support for voting tonight to make masks optional in all of our schools as of March 1st, when Public Health Madison-Dane County mandate ends. Public Health Madison-Dane County has already assured everyone that the mask mandate will end on March 1st. Therefore, there is no reason to wait to see what happens. All of you have seen the overwhelming data in science which supports no masks in schools. And just as important is removing masks to try to begin to undo the harm that has been done to our kids, developmental, educationally, mentally, socially, and emotionally. No one is saying outlaw masks. We are saying make masks optional. If a student, teacher, or staff member wishes to still wear a mask, that should be their choice, not a mandate from our schools. Wanakee, Middleton, Cross Plains, and Belleville school districts have already decided to make masks optional in all of their schools starting March 1st. Please follow their lead and do the same for our kids, teachers, and staff in McFarland. The next is from Wendy Eckles, 6205 Hawk Crossing. Again, it deals with optional masking. It is clear that science is supporting schools should be mask optional at this point. Please make masks optional. Otherwise, parents and students are going to revolt and start protesting. This is getting ridiculous. The next is from Trish Fortune, 5987 Praywood Drive. Again, the subject is optional masking. Dear school board members, I am writing to you to ask to have our schools follow the upcoming expiration of the mask mandate on Tuesday, March 1st. The Public Health Madison-Dane County and Science now says it is safe to lift the mask mandate, and there is no reason we shouldn't follow that guidance within our schools. From day one, we have used the Public Health Madison-Dane County guidelines for our protocols, and it would be greatly disappointing if we go against what they are recommending now. I believe that having the option to wear a mask rather than mandating it is what is best for our learning community going forward. I am confident that the transition to optional masking will go smoothly, and we will see many positive intellectual and emotional developments among our students and staff. Respectively, Trish Fortune, McFarland High School, Phi-Ed and health teacher. The next is from Larry Gates, 4642 Bellinggraph Street. Again, mask optional. Good evening, McFarland School Board and administrators. I'm writing to voice my support for voting to make mask optional in all of our schools as of March 1st, when the Public Health Madison-Dane County mandate ends. Given Public Health Madison and Dane County has already announced that mask mandate will end on March 1st, I believe it prudent for our schools to make the mask optional. There are various districts around Madison that have already made this change, and given the damage already done by these mask mandates, I believe this change is already long overdue. The next is from John Gozer, 6413 Exchange Street, McFarland Public School Leaders and Board. I write in support of parents and students being afforded the choice of whether or not to wear a face covering. At this point, our students and children have been asked to shoulder too much of the burden with COVID-19 mitigation efforts. Our students deserve a return to normalcy or afforded the option to do so. Kind regards, Dr. John Gozer. The next is from James Hanson, 5920 Osborne Drive. I'm writing in hopes of the school district lifting the mask mandate for our children. There is enough information out there to show that the masks have limited effectiveness in stopping COVID transmission. That, along with the opportunity for people to get vaccinated in less severity, Omicron variant, means it is time to allow our schools to be mask optional. The impacts that masking has had on their development and mental health is tragic. The next is from Tara Hanson, 5920 Osborne Drive. I'm writing in hopes of the school district lifting the mask mandate for our children. There is enough information out there to show that the masks have limited effectiveness in stopping COVID transmission. That, along with the opportunity for people to get vaccinated in less severity, the Omicron variant means it's time to allow our schools to be mask optional. The impacts that masking has had on their development and mental health is tragic. The next is from John Heitzman, 6020 East Linden Parkway. Hello, I ask that families be allowed to decide whether their children should wear masks and that mask mandate policy be lifted effective March 1st. I found this excerpt from The Atlantic. I suggest you read the article in its entirety. We reviewed a variety of studies, some conducted by the CDC itself, some cited by the CDC as evidence of masking effectiveness in school setting, and others touted by media to the same end, to try to find evidence that would justify the CDC's no end in sight mask guidance for the very low risk pediatric population, particularly post-vaccination. We came up empty-handed. To our knowledge, the CDC has performed 3 studies to determine whether masking children in school reduces COVID-19 transmission. The first is a study of elementary schools in Georgia conducted before vaccines became available, which found that masking teachers was associated with a statistically significant decrease in COVID-19 transmission, but masking students was not. A finding that the CDC's masking guidelines do not account for. A second, more recent study of Arizona schools in Maricopa and Pima counties concluded that schools without mask mandates were more likely to have COVID-19 outbreaks than schools with mask mandates. Yet more than 90% of the schools in the no mask mandate group were in Maricopa County, an area that has significantly lower vaccination rates than Pima County. This study had other serious shortcomings, including failure to quantify the size of outbreaks and failure to report testing protocols for the students. The third CDC study found that US counties without mask mandates saw larger increases in pediatric COVID-19 cases after schools opened, but again did not control for important differences in vaccination rates. The CDC has cited several other studies conducted in the previous school year to support its claim that masks are a key school safety measure. However, none of these studies, including ones conducted in North Carolina, Utah, Wisconsin, and Missouri, isolated the impact of masks specifically. Because all students were required to mask and no comparisons were made with schools that did not require masks. Therefore, the overall takeaway from these studies that schools with mask mandates have lower COVID-19 transmission rates than schools without mask mandates is not justified by the data that has been gathered. I have asked you all to share studies regarding cloth and surgical mask efficacy. I have yet to receive a response. Thank you, John. The next is from Aaron Holland at 6318 Johnson Street. Kids are low risk. Why mandate a mask? Let's give parents and young adults a choice. My next is from Ryan Jolson, 4181 High Street. Please do the right thing and vote for a mask optional policy effective immediately. Waiting 2 more weeks or until after spring break is pointless. Lead the way in Dane County and be the first school district to give parents and kids a choice for the first time in almost 2 years when it comes to masks. The kids deserve to breathe clean, fresh air more than anyone, and they are the ones that have suffered and sacrificed more than any other group. My kids used to love going to school, and I'm sure they will again once they no longer need to wear a mask. And my last one is from Nate Kirch, 2891 County Highway AB. Good morning, McFarland School Board and administrators. I wanted to write in to voice my support for voting tonight to make masks optional in all our schools as of March 1st, when the public health Madison-Dane County mandate ends. All of you have seen the overwhelming data and science which supports no masks in school. And just as important is removing masks to try to begin to undo the harm that has been done to our kids, developmentally, educationally, mentally, socially, and emotionally. No one is saying outlaw masks. We are saying make masks optional. If a student, teacher, or staff member wishes to still wear a mask, that should be their choice, not a mandate from our schools. Wanakee, Middleton, Cross Plains, and Belleville school districts have already decided to make masks optional in all of their schools starting March 1st. Please follow their lead and do the same for our kids, teachers, and staff in McFarland.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anderson. I will pick up from this point on, and my comments support mask optional alternative. My first is from Heidi Knapp, 6167 Tuscobia Trail. Hello, McFarland School Board and administrators. I want to voice my support for voting tonight to make masks optional in all of our schools as of March 1st, when the Public Health Madison-Dane County mask mandate ends. PHMDC has stated that the mask mandate will end on March 1st, and with that, there is no need to wait to see what happens. We need you to take action now. We have all seen the overwhelming data and science which supports no masks in schools. It is time you listen and actually follow the science and data. No one is saying people can't wear masks in school if that is what is best for them and their family, but we are saying please make masks optional. This should not be a mandate from our schools, but a choice for every family. Numerous neighboring districts, Stoughton, Wanakee, Middleton, Cross Plains, and Belleville school districts have already decided to make masks optional in all of their schools starting March 1st. Please follow their lead and do the same for all of our schools, kids, teachers, and staff in McFarland. Thank you. Next is Sabrina Labdis Arnold. And please excuse me if I butchered the name's pronunciation. From 5004 Wentworth Circle. Hello. I would like to first say thank you to the board for their commitment to the school district. And thank you to the teachers in the district, especially those at Conrad Albion Primary School who have been teaching in person since mid-September 2020. I am writing to encourage the school board to adopt a mask optional policy when the county mandate expires March 1st. Based on data dashboard information, student vaccination rates are between 67 and 88%, depending on the grade level. Staff vaccination is at least 84%, which does not include any booster doses, as those are not published. Last month, former CDC Director Tom Frieden said COVID is adapting to us. We need to adapt. With the rates of vaccination coupled with the rates of natural immunity from recent positive cases in our schools, I believe we are ready to adapt. And if we go back to August 2020, the former superintendent laid out a 5-step plan for the district. Step 5 would look like normal school and occur after vaccination and therapeutics were available. We now have both. Under a mask optional policy, vulnerable students and staff can still wear a high quality mask of their choosing. But disruptions to normal living, while perhaps necessary for a time, are never without harms. Children need to see faces to learn and connect with their peers and teachers. Nationwide, speech language pathologists have seen an increase in speech delays in children over the past 2 years. A mask optional model is also crucial for mental health. I would also point out that the US CDC has not conducted a randomized control trial on masking in schools. Many of the studies they do tout are missing appropriate controls or had no significant findings. For all of these reasons, I ask the board to thoroughly consider this policy change. Thank you. My next is from Jennifer Morris of 6106 Saunders Court. Please vote to make masks optional for all students in all situations at school and extracurricular events. Let students make their own choices for what is best for them and their individual situations. Kids have had ample time to get vaccinated if they chose to, excuse me. All kids are now eligible except the few 4K students that have not yet turned 5 years old. Let the focus at school be learning, not policing if masks are worn properly. The situation for a lot of students and staff has become toxic due to this issue. Schools are for learning and growing. Masks are impeding that. Please also encourage all schools to return to normal in their school day. Some examples I am aware of include no 6th grade money unit. WIS lunches are still by seating chart. Let kids sit by who they want to as they have in the past. Not using musical instruments like ukuleles as they are difficult to sanitize, and I'm sure there are many more examples I am not listing here. Our kids have suffered and we need to work towards making up for this lost time and return to a previous normal. Fear is not a reason to not educate our kids. Not let them be kids and not let them participate fully. Let kids and families decide what is best for them. N95s are readily available for any student that feels the need to be protected. Let those who don't feel the need to show their faces. Please join the other school districts in the area that are moving to mask optional and join what the majority of our state has been for a long time. Vote mask optional at all schools. Next is Matt Morris, 6105 Saunders Court. Please allow the students to be mask optional when the Dane County mask mandate ends. Areas across the county are dropping the mask mandates as they have been shown to be ineffective in stopping the spread and are damaging to the development and mental health of the students. It is clear that COVID will be with us permanently, but it makes no sense to mask students indefinitely. In each school board debate on whether to open schools or to make masks optional, there has been a consistent request to simply wait a little longer to see if things improve. There is always another holiday or event that may create another potential spike in cases. With spring break coming up, I expect there will be a call to continue masking until mid-April, when case counts can again be reviewed. Then in mid-April, the argument will be that we are so close to the end of the year, let's just get past this school year and then reevaluate leading into the fall. Ending the mask requirement in a week, a month, or a year from now will make no difference in our efforts to get out of the pandemic. COVID will still be around, and those who want mandatory masks will have the same reasoning. Just wait a little longer. What is certain is continuing to mask students will continue to harm their development and mental health. These past 2 years have seriously damaged the development of a generation of students. They have been deprived of 2 years. They have been deprived of the formative experiences we as adults enjoyed as kids. Things as simple as sitting next to your friends at lunch instead of on assigned seats, and other events as important as an indoor, unmasked, and non-socially distanced prom. It is time to move on and let our students start to live normally again. Thank you for your consideration. Next is Jennifer Pagels, 5928 Holscher Road. I am writing to ask that the board consider and implement an updated policy for masking in school. Please consider changing the policy to allow optional masking of the students. I support masking as a choice for parents and their kids, and I ask that you implement a policy that allows individual families to make the decision on whether or not to wear masks in school. Thank you, Jennifer Pagel. Next is Candace Pennekamp, 6110 Pattison Court. Hello, I am writing to ask the board to lift the mask requirements for all students in all of our schools on March 1st. I'm confident this board will vote to remove this requirement because no other option makes sense. What I'm more concerned about is the continued experience in our schools that is still far from normal. This isn't because of any limitations or restrictions by PHMDC, and it needs to stop. The kids should be able to eat in the same lunchroom together. Winter dances should not have been canceled. Entire educational units should not have been canceled. The list of cancellations and restrictions you continue to put on our kids is so disheartening. It doesn't make sense anymore. It never really did. Maybe it made sense to be cautious way back in March of 2020, but now we don't need to move slowly when it comes to getting back to normal. It should have happened long ago for our kids. Enough is enough. Next, I've got Casey Ray on Bonner Trail. Dear McFarland School Board members and administration, the mask mandate will end in Dane County on March 1st. As you indicated in previous meetings, this was the key item holding our district back from moving forward with a mask optional choice. At this time, I am requesting that you update your policies to those reflected throughout Wisconsin as a mask optional. This should be for every student and employee, regardless of vaccination status. Many schools in Dane County have already publicly announced this decision. And as you know, hundreds of schools and nearly all of the counties in our state are mask optional. Our priorities over the past 2 years have shifted from our students to disease prevention, and it is time for a change. COVID numbers nationwide continue to decline. It's time that we have a mask optional regardless of vaccination status. Sincerely, Casey Ray. Next is Jen Rapensek. And again, I apologize if I mispronounce the name. 6106 Forest Ridge Court. We ask that you please remove the mask mandate in schools for our children. It has been proven ineffective as we review over a year's worth of data between states and cities that have had mask mandates, lockdowns, etc., versus those that have not. We are not asking for a no mask policy. We are simply requesting that parents have the right to mask or unmask their own individual child based on their individual needs. Our children are the least vulnerable to severe illness, yet they are still being forced to mask. Academic standards are now changing to accommodate the social and developmental shortcomings of the last 2 years, as the CDC has recently lowered early childhood speech milestones. Also, the demand for mental health services has drastically increased in our community. This is a disservice to our youth and the future leaders of our communities. Thank you. Next, I have Brad Samuel, 5409 North Pass. The focus of this district should shift from COVID restrictions to now practicing the mental, social, and emotional health of students. Protecting the mental, social, and emotional health of students. According to research and reports by the Surgeon General, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the CDC, since COVID, children are experiencing unprecedented levels of anxiety, depression, and other mental health impacts. Child deaths from suicide vastly outnumber deaths from COVID and are increasing. Depressive and anxiety symptoms have doubled during the pandemic. 25% of our youth are experiencing depressive symptoms and 20% are experiencing anxiety symptoms. COVID restrictions in our schools have contributed significantly to these stats. We need to de-escalate fear of this virus and not enhance it. Masks increase fear and falsely convey that schools are unsafe, which increases harm to students' mental health. Let's encourage children, parents, and staff to see mild COVID infections as inevitable and not alarming. Let's encourage extracurricular activities and social events without fear and without masks. COVID poses very little threat to serious disease for students. So in order to actually protect our children, an urgent return to fully normal schooling is needed. Please vote masks optional in all of our schools as of March 1st, when the Public Health Madison-Dane County mandate ends. Next, I have Jane and Tom Sandine, 2248 County Road AB. McFarland School Board, please vote tonight to make masks optional for all McFarland schools effective March 1st. The large drop in cases and hospitalizations combined with the high vaccinations rates in our students indicates that it is time to finally eliminate all COVID restrictions. If parents desire for their children to use masks, that will certainly remain their option. History over the last 2 years has shown that schools have not been sources of community spread. Schools only 20 miles away from us have been mask optional and have experienced the same average case rate as McFarland. UW-Madison also announced last week that they are lifting the mask mandate. The letter to students and parents says, the research strongly suggests that individuals who are vaccinated, boosted, and wearing a high-quality mask have a high degree of protection, regardless of what other individuals around them may choose. That means we're at a good point where each individual can decide for themselves. Thank you, Jane and Tom Sandine. Next, we've got Irina Shapigelman, 6177 East Red Oak Trail, McFarland. Please move to make masks optional in our schools starting on March 1st. Our kids deserve to get back to some normalcy. Masks are hurting their mental well-being. With vaccines available and COVID cases down and the majority of them being very mild, there is no need for masks anymore. Next, I have Danica Smith, 5976 Holshire Road. Hello again. COVID continues to present ever-changing obstacles and will do so for the unforeseeable future. The science is continuously changing and the popular fear-based narrative is taking quite a different turn across the country. Locally, the narrative is changing as well. Public Health Madison-Dane County has made the decision to end its mask mandate on March 1st, 2022. Along with overwhelming data that suggests masks are ineffective and proving to be harmful, lifting the mask mandate on March 1st should heavily influence the McFarland School District's decision to make masks optional for all students. Our district needs to move forward, realizing COVID is part of our lives, and start allowing people to make decisions that best fit their individual needs. Make masks optional for all students. Enough is enough. There is endless data proving schools with mask mandates do not prevent nor lower COVID cases. Data actually suggest higher transmissions in schools with mask mandates than those without. It seems logical to take this information into consideration when determining what is best for all students and staff. If this data is ignored, aren't you then choosing to continue with protocols that in fact increase the risk of COVID in schools? This cannot be tolerated. What matrix are you using in your decision-making process? What is the data you are using to weigh your options? Not what we believe is best for the students. What are the facts? I believe you have been provided a plethora of data on specific school districts in our area, as well as our state, showing the ineffectiveness of masks. We are far enough into this pandemic to have excellent data showing how schools, many of which are much larger than ours and have never had mask mandates, are moving forwards successfully without masks. We need to be progressive and step away from fear. We need to move forward. We look forward to having these questions answered. These answers and your decision to make masks optional for all students are important to us as we gather the information we need in making decisions that are in the best interest of our daughter. Danica and Ryan Smith. And my last is from Herbert Taylor, 5991 Holscher Road. Greetings. Everyone at this meeting understands the absurdity of masking children, yet it continues nonetheless. As Public Health Madison-Dane County admitted, they have no evidence to prove masking has prevented a single case of COVID. There is so much more to public health than prevention of disease by covering someone's face with a fabric used to make t-shirts, or asking them to wear surgical masks that worn on the box not to be used as a gas mask or does not prevent viral infection. If any of these protocols worked as they were intended, then why do I get an email every day saying general notification of COVID-19 cases? Those emails are promptly deleted. Like most people, we are done with all of this, the onerous restriction, as they have had no tangible impact on COVID transmission or prevention. Stop treating unvaccinated children different than vaccinated. Stop creating a generation of traumatized youth. I implore you to remove all restrictions, masking, isolating, testing, and whatever else the district is doing to stop the spread. We can return to normal tomorrow. It is up to the board to be humble, admit that they got this one wrong, and listen to all the parents who have been asking for a year to return to normal. One child under the age of 19 has died of COVID since March of 2020 in Dane County. How many have been murdered, killed in a car accident, drowned, or choked to death on food? The district needs to reassess the risks its students faces in this disease. Thank you for your time. Herb Taylor. Moving along, Christine, are you prepared to make your statement, or should we read the other public comments first? Oh, you're Christine. Yeah.
Ryan, I know. Go ahead and read the other ones first.
Okay. Angie Straub is going to read the remainder of our public comment letters.
Yes, and I'm actually going to, before I begin reading these, I would like to invite any attendees to like to make a public appearance by speaking to the board. Please utilize a portion found at the bottom of your Zoom window. In the Q&A, we would ask that you type your name, address, subject of interest, and whether you have discussed this item prior to the meeting with either a district administrator or President Howery. After submitting that information, I would transfer you over to speak to the board. And now I will read the additional written comments that were submitted for this meeting. All right, the first one that I'm going to read is from Amy Babula from Main Street. Members of the school board and administration, we would like to urge you to continue the mask requirements in all the McFarland schools until the rate of COVID-19 transmission has reduced to low in our community. We realize that the mask order for Dane County will be expiring, but the rules we use in the schools to keep our children safe and to provide an inclusive and healthy environment for learning are different than what adults use in their daily lives. It is important that we provide safety for all of our students so that they can remain healthy and in school. Other school districts have successfully used masking requirements in schools when there wasn't a county mask order to keep the rate of COVID transmission to a minimum. We all want our children to be in school in person and to be able to participate in sports and other extracurricular activities. Masks will help us to do that. There is solid evidence from schools who have made mask wearing optional that there is more infection and more quarantine without 100% mask wearing. Our students have had enough interruptions to their learning over the past 2 years. Please keep our children in school, keep the spread of COVID-19 down, and keep them learning without the interruption of quarantines and illnesses by keeping the mask mandate for all students and staff. The CDC, American Academy of Pediatrics, and the Department of Pediatrics continue to recommend universal masking in schools, regardless of vaccination status. Please follow the guidelines of these public health organizations and use masks in our schools to keep everyone safe. Thank you for your continued service to the families in our community. Sincerely, Amy Babula and Clyde Drake. And apologies if I mispronounced. Next, we have Melissa Carr at 4614 Bellingrass Street, again, regarding COVID protocols. I am writing to ask that universal masking continue in our schools 4K through 12. Removing mandatory masks is inequitable because it puts the burden of health and safety squarely on the kids who need the most protection. Kids who have pre-existing conditions or are immunocompromised, or have family members at home who would be most impacted by an infection. This is especially true in K-5 at CEPS and WIS, where students are not distanced in the classroom or at lunch, and therefore the recommended layered mitigation measures are not in place. It is up to us as a school community to educate and protect all students, not just those who don't have health concerns. Further, when masking is optional, that creates groups of unmasked kids and masked kids, which leads to bullying of those who continue to wear masks. I've heard multiple stories of kids in McFarland who wear their mask between bites at lunch or on the playground or when playing after school, and kids are already questioning them and giving them a hard time about their mask wearing. Keeping mandatory masking levels the field and eliminates further opportunity for kids to be questioned about their mask wearing. If McFarland makes masks optional, it is crucial that a comprehensive plan is in place to identify and stop mask-related bullying. It is important to remember that the American Academy of Pediatrics, Public Health Medicine in Dane County, and all other major health agencies have not changed their recommendation for universal masking in schools. This is not only to protect the health of students and staff, but also to keep as many kids in school as possible to avoid learning interruptions. In November, we circulated a community letter in support of universal K-12 masking, and we received 329 signatures. The week the community letter was submitted, the 14-day positivity rate for Dane County was 4.8%. Currently, despite the recent drop in cases, it is still at 9.2%. At the time of the community letter signing, the 14-day average number of cases for Dane County was at 155. Currently, it is at 309.5. It is reasonable to assume that strong community support for universal K-12 masking continues today, given that there is more COVID activity now than there was when people signed the letter in November. Thank you for reading my letter. Just one moment. And my last one that I have here is from Amy Lawrence, 5219 North Autumn Lane. As a parent and former staff member, I am encouraging the board to continue universal masking for students and staff. While cases are thankfully decreasing, the CDC, American Academy of Pediatrics, and UW Department of Pediatrics all still recommend universal masking in schools. I trust these groups of experts to weigh the costs and benefits for children. In an interview on February 11, Dr. David Hill, official spokesperson for the AAP and adjunct assistant professor at the University of North Carolina School of Medicine and Pediatric Hospitalist at Wayne UNC Healthcare, said he believes it is still too early from a public health standpoint to drop universal masking, and says that he would encourage those school districts to keep all of their students and faculty as safe as possible as long as necessary. We've seen significant differences in COVID-19 transmissions between schools with masking and those without. Multiple studies have shown that masking reduces spread and outbreaks, and they work best when everyone is wearing them. If keeping kids learning in the classroom is our top priority, we should continue to use all the tools we have at our disposal. Dropping mask requirements would also mean we need to reevaluate quarantine, isolation, and contact tracing policies enacted based on universal masking. For example, students or staff who test positive can return after 5 days, but should strictly for the next 5 days. All close contacts should mask for 10 days after exposure. Will that guidance be followed, and how will it be enforced? I understand that masks present greater challenges for some students. Are there accommodations we can make for these students without abandoning expert guidance for the rest? I know we are tired of wearing masks, and I am hopeful that the transmission level in our area will continue to drop and fall out of the high category soon. Until that happens, we should continue to follow the guidance of medical and public health experts. That is the last of the written comments that were submitted, and I am reviewing the Q&A. We do not have anyone who has registered to speak live at this meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Angie. So we'll move along to McFarland High School student reports. Do we have some students in the house?
Hi, I'm Nadia. I'm the student representative for
Welcome.
today. So,
Take it away. The floor is yours.
today Connect would like to just give you a quick rundown of some things that have been going on at the school in the last few weeks, what we've been working on, and then I'm going to introduce Girl Up as well, as I'm a member of both Connect and Girl Up. So the first week of February was Black Lives Matter at School Week, and so McFarland High School's BSU helped McFarland celebrate this important week. On our announcements, there were daily Black History facts and dress-up days for MHS students to participate in. So during the week, students got to participate in those days and got to learn a little bit more about Black history. And they were able to buy BLM School Week shirts to help support the BSU. And then looking forward, the elections are coming up in April. And so we've started working with Ms. Pliska to help students in the high school who are 18 get registered to vote, and also working on making them more informed when it comes to their voting. So getting a little bit of information about upcoming school board candidates and the other upcoming candidates for other elections by using bulletin boards, pamphlets, and short presentations to get them some more information about who they will be voting for and the positions they're voting on. So Girl Up. So who Girl Up is? McFarland High School's Girl Up is an extension of the UN organization Girl Up, which was founded in 2010 to help the advancement of women and girls across the world. And the McFarland's High School Girl Up operates with the same goals, which include striving for gender equality, ending gender-based violence, educating girls across the world, and getting more women and girls involved in sports as well as STEM. So what Girl Up does, as a club, we organize a variety of events and a range of fundraisers, and they all have very diverse purposes with a range of areas and impact, just geographically speaking. So on February 11th, the club took a trip to WIS for Women in STEM Day. We gave a short presentation to the 4th grade classes about the importance of getting women involved in STEM and just the importance of STEM in general. And then gave them little kits with a seed in it so that they could perform a science experiment themselves at home. And then earlier in the year, we did a raffle to raise money for CamFed, which is a global education fund. Just a bit more visually, this is some pictures of things Girl Up has done. So the 2 posts on the right are from Girl Up's Instagram page. So you can see just some information about women in STEM, as well as Girl Up was able to raise $150 to give to CamFed to help support girls going to school in underdeveloped countries where that's not always a possibility. And then on the left, there's a picture of the feminine product baskets that have been placed in the bathrooms at MHS that Girl Up was able to get some help on from the school, and And then these are some more pictures from the Women in STEM Day of Girl Up members at WIS and then helping to make the kits. So, and then just looking to the future, we're gonna, for Girl Up, we will be working for March being Women's History Month and the 8th being International Women's Day, trying to plan some fun events for our school during those important dates. And then in our broader future, we just plan to continue working to support women and girls in McFarland and across the world. And that's all we have for you this week.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Any of the other board members have a question or comment for Nadia? Anyone?
I think you did a great job, and I'm just really impressed by this whole group connect. So thank you so much, Nadia.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, I would mirror Bruce as well. I think we're seeing some really, really great things that are coming out of trying to get back to a semi-normal state during the pandemic. And I really appreciate everything you guys are doing. Anybody got anything else? If not, thank you very much, Nadia.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
Look forward to maybe seeing you again. Moving on to the district administrator's report. Doesn't look like there's anything additional there. So we'll move on to discussion on the equity pillar of the strategic plan.
All right, thank you very much. One of the things that I'd like to point out is that we've been working on the equity pillar as kind of like a framework on what the other pillars might look like once we've decided. I had sent out a draft that we had been working on for the equity pillar. And then I wrote a blog on that about a week ago. Last Friday, since I had a little free time, since we didn't have staff or students in the building, I took the day to basically think about the strategic plan and where we were going and what it was looking like. And what I came to the conclusion when I read the rest of the minutes and I'd read some of the comments that had come in from various individuals is that maybe I needed to take a step back and our strategic plan could be look at some overall goals. And within those overall goals, then try to create specific action plans underneath those so they'd be a little easier to understand and communicate. So just for the people who may not have seen that, is that what I thought was maybe a little tagline for a mission statement. Remember, these are all just my ideas, rough ideas, so they would need a fair amount of work. But preparing leaders for today and the future, because that's what I look at education is basically our overall goal, is to prepare the people that are going to lead our nation, to lead our communities, to lead our state, to lead our schools in the future. And if we can prepare people to be good leaders, we are going to be the beneficiaries as a society of that preparation. So I took a look at all of the various comments that came in from the survey that we put out in the fall. And I thought that basically they centered around 3 different areas. And I just called them goals. And I felt that equity, because what individuals had stated to me is that equity should actually be a part of every one of our goals as different little subsets of showing whether or not we're doing it rather than a standalone goal. So I thought that maybe the first goal in looking at the survey could be to provide a curriculum and instructional strategies that provide our students with the inspiration, confidence, knowledge, skills, and opportunities to successfully prepare them for their future. A second one, to provide a school environment that is mentally, emotionally, and physically safe for students and staff. And a third goal, to build strong cooperative relationships with parents, governmental agencies, businesses, and the greater McFarland community. Because I took a look at all of the various comments that we had in our survey, they all seem to center on those 3 areas. And each one of those, as I mentioned, could have equity underneath it. So those would just be overall goals, and then under each one, we'd have very specific action plans for, what would this look like in action? What would we see? And how would we measure our success? So basically, I put that down as for some discussion for the board tonight to find out if my latest idea made any sense, if you think we might be on the right track, or any type of input, because if it is, the administrative council will start working on that and start creating what we would consider action plans underneath that to bring to the board to show what our thoughts would be as one of the next steps.
Any questions or comments?
I just want to make sure that I'm looking at the right item. So this is not in our board doc, right? It's the one you emailed to us. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm on the literal same page with you. So I'm going to go there.
Anyone else?
I feel like you're on the right track. I like the way you've set these goals. So I'm in agreement with moving forward.
I would mirror what Kate said.
And so would I.
I've been a proponent of downsizing the actual strategic plan to a 1-page or 2-page document outlining the pillars that we have and then build out from that, I think from behind. I just don't want to complicate the process of actually putting the strategic plan together by putting too much into the document that explains what it is.
And
Anybody got
just to be
anything else?
clear is that we felt that equity belonged under each one of those pillars. So as we go forward in creating, specifics and what action plans would look like, we would have equity statements and goals under each of those major goals, because we do realize that how important that was from the survey results. It's just that they'll be embedded into those 3 larger goals with specific action plans on what that would look like under each goal.
Yep. Yep, I like that. Christine?
So it sounds like we're moving away from pillars and looking at the 3 goals. Is that accurate? So my follow-up question to that is, are these going to be, are the goals going to be defined district-wide, or are they going to be site level?
Well, what my thought is that the goals would be district level goals. They may look a little bit different in an action plan in a building, but the goals would be district-wide goals. And we could call them pillars. When I used pillar the first time, it's synonymous with goal, but what I'd look at is they'd be for the district, and then at a building level, that specific action plan might look a little different for the high school than for Conrad Elvium.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, Christine. Did
No,
you?
I was done, Craig. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I think that only makes sense, Wayne, as the situations in each of the 4 buildings is at least somewhat unique to itself. So, it stands to reason that we may have to just tweak things a little bit once we get into the real meat of it. Anybody got anything else?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I'll probably embarrass her, but Kelly Vetter, I really liked your email, and I didn't comment to you, but I think a lot of the writings and the emails that were going back and forth from various people were really, it's just food for thought. And, I kind of look at this, and maybe instead of thinking it as pillars necessarily, and yet they are, I would like to see all of our strategic plans, all of the, I'm going to call them pillars for lack of a better word, but I like to see them woven together. And if you kind of metaphorically can follow what I'm saying, it's like a rope, it's made up of, little bands of fibers that in and of themselves aren't very strong, but woven together, they form something very powerful. And I kind of think in some ways what, Dr. Anderson now has put together here is a start of that. And so I really hope we can think in terms of taking these pillars, these strands, and weaving them together. And I think we'll just make the whole that much stronger. So anyway, thank you, Kelly, for that idea.
I would agree, Bruce.
Well, I can tell you, Bruce, that,
Go ahead,
well, I
Mike.
can tell you, Bruce, that though I'm not, I do not have what I'll call visual skills, Aaron Tarnitzer is thinking of ways that we can take the various goals and statements and make them into a visual that people can relate to so that it can show that interconnectivity. So he had some ideas on how we might be able to do that going forward. And I said, I'm glad he has that skill. That's not a skill I have.
Well, then, that worked out perfectly, I would say. Does that make sense to you, Bruce?
Yes, it does. In
You
fact,
good?
I briefly talked with Aaron about that as well. So I think it's a great
Okay.
idea.
All right, very good. Thank you. Kate, you have anything? Good? Arlen? Anything to add?
No,
Okay.
no, I think everything's good.
In that case, then we'll move on. I think I have a question here. Did we skip over the career technical education report? I've got it in my,
No, she's going to do it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't
She
hear.
was going to do it tonight. She was going to do it tonight, but she's decided we've moved her to March instead.
Okay. All right, so that will take us to, we've got some future school board meeting dates. And then we'll move on to our discussion items. We've gotten the equity pillar. Next.
Craig,
Yes.
excuse me, are we going to just talk at all about other areas or goals we'd like to focus, or is that just too premature? I don't have a problem either way. This is on the strategic
I
plan.
think we would move that up to a future meeting, not too far in the future, but I think it's not on the agenda for this meeting any further.
Okay,
So our next discussion action item is discussion and possible action on the COVID-19 protocols.
Well, one of the things is that, of course, has been mentioned in plenty of our comments. We did survey our staff because when Public Health Madison and Dane County stated that they were going to basically not extend the mask mandate after March 1st, we had talked about this way back in November when we thought we might make a change. So this would be, and we have talked about this at many of our previous meetings. So one of the things that we are looking at, in fact, the superintendents talk about this every Friday. So this is a continual topic that we have at least once a week, if not more than once a week. So as it was in some of the comments, several school districts are starting to loosen up on the mask mandate in their schools and making it more of a choice for individuals. Each one will look a little bit different. One of the things that, as we talked about it, we being different administrators in the district, is that if we went to a type of a criteria that would state when a school would be, should wear masks because the number of cases were high enough to warrant it. And if we didn't have enough cases, that masks would be something we'd still recommend that individuals do. But when we did put out a survey to the staff, I may be off by 0.1%, but basically 45% of our staff that did respond, and we had, I think, over 260 responses, 45% felt that we should go to a mask strongly encouraged and recommended, but not mandated, so that people had an individual choice. About 25% felt we should use a criteria system, and 30% felt that we should stay as a mask mandated until the end of the school year. So it's not that we have, everybody's thinking the same way. Everybody's thinking it from various ways from their vantage points. But I would say, even talking with some of the different medical experts that we meet with on a regular basis, is that one of their thoughts is that since the case numbers are coming down, that we should be able to respond and potentially not make a mask mandate, but to give people some choice so that if in the future numbers go up and we have to go back to a mask mandate or requiring people to wear masks, they would realize that when the numbers were going down, we gave the flexibility. And when the numbers went back up, then we asked people to mask. So what we are looking at tonight is recommending that the board loosen up their restrictions and either go to, right, and we used the one we used was, we modified from the Jefferson School District, or that we go to a mask or only encouraged and recommended, but not mandated status.
I think maybe from this point forward, I would like to hear Dr. Merwin's opinion on this. And then just to kind of prepare the board members for it, I would like to hear from each board member on their feelings in terms of what you feel like our next step should be. So Dr. Merwin, if you would please give us your 2 cents worth on the direction that you would recommend that we go.
So I have a lot of cents worth of recommendations and advice.
Excellent, thank you.
This is a worldwide pandemic. It's not an individual pandemic. I'll keep my comments short. Masks work, vaccines work. The vast majority of the 934,000 deaths in the US could have been prevented with vaccines. There have been 560 deaths in the US in kids 5 to 18 years of age since COVID started. That's not zero. That's not kids don't get sick. You can look at the American Family Children's Hospital. They've been very full with the Omicron variant with kids. There is no evidence that masked kids have any more mental health issues than unmasked kids do. The mental health issues are all across the board, across the world, and the masks aren't what's causing it. My 2 cents worth would be a lot of time it's the adults that are causing it for the kids. For the people who are worried that masks are going to go away, if you're vaccinated and you wear a mask, you are protected against severe disease with COVID. So keep that in mind. Having said all that, I think it is time to go to a mask recommended, and with the caveat that if the cases go up or a new variant comes, we're going to have to put the mask back on, much to the chagrin of people who don't want anybody wearing a mask ever because it's their personal choice. But we do have to protect the kids who are vulnerable, the teachers who are vulnerable, and we have to keep the kids in school, and that's what masks have allowed us to do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Merwin. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Merwin? Or we can start talking a little bit about what our individual members, Christine.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you so much for your expert opinion. Also, I wanted to ask about, I don't know if you're familiar with what Dr. Anderson was referring to with having masks come back on at a certain level.
Yep.
So I would like to get your opinion on that idea, because I'm hearing them talked about in different ways, very, very split, like almost like a free for all if anyone wants to wear it. This idea of we might need to go back to masks, and then the third idea being everyone's masking. I feel like there might be some blending in there. We could compromise on a couple of things. And I was wanting to get your perspective on masking when the numbers changed, perhaps, or within a particular school, please.
So I don't know that there's a specific number that everybody can use to say this is the number that if it gets above, we have to go and mask. But I think what Dr. Anderson is proposing is a very reasonable number. People can look back and remember that we have closed schools because there's been too many staff and kids out with probably influenza, although we weren't really testing at the time. But at some point, if there's too much sickness, you have to close either a school or multiple schools. And let's face it, influenza didn't kill 934,000 people in 2 years. This is a deadly virus. It may not be deadly in some people's eyes, but in worldwide and in the US, it is still killing people. Maybe not as many with this current variant, but We do need to have some numbers, and I think what is being proposed is certainly reasonable.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Christine?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Dr. Merwin?
Yeah, I do. I hear on the news and on radios and different information that we're coming to the point of herd immunity now, or so that basically everybody's getting more acceptable or can accommodate it. The immunity part of it. Is that right, Doc, or what do you think?
It is right. It's hard to know exactly what herd immunity is because some of that is people who've been vaccinated and some of that is people who've been infected and recovered. And the really hard part with herd immunity is what's coming next. If we don't have any other variants, then we probably are attaining some kind of herd immunity. But another variant could certainly not be something that we're protected against but we won't know that until it happens.
Anyone else? Christine?
Sorry, thank you for opening that door up, because I was reading something today when I was prepping for the meeting about they're calling it a 2, where it's like an Omicron 2A variant. They're seeing it be a little as virulent, so as and a little more deadly, similar to Delta. And it just, I mean, it literally just coming out. So I don't know anything. Have you heard of anything?
It's a combination when you talk about how deadly is a virus, not only how virulent is it or how much disease does it cause, but how easily is it transmitted, and is it across all age groups or just a certain age group? And that's where it gets difficult. We just have to wait and see kind of how things go and cross our fingers that getting the vaccine is kind of like wearing your seatbelt. It's going to protect you from a lot of bad stuff, but not all the bad stuff.
Did that answer your question, Christine?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Merwin? Bruce?
My message is actually probably to Wayne rather than Dr. Merwin, but thank you, Dr. Merwin.
You're welcome.
Wayne, are we going to continue to still each month visit COVID-19 protocols? Will that be part of throughout the rest of this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we continue to have that as a normal agenda item on each of our board agendas.
Okay. And the second question would be, and we're still planning on following Dane County's lead on this.
Right, if Dane County were to have a mask mandate again, then obviously that would impact us, and as soon as it went into effect, we would go into effect.
You good, Bruce?
Well, are we going to make comments or?
If we're through with questions for Dr. Merwin, I would like to get each board member's opinions on the direction that they feel like we should follow. And I will go last. Bruce, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll start. First of all, it was a wonderful email we got today showing the percentage of our students who are vaccinated. That was something I was very proud of, again, for McFarland to do that. And I do support at this point ending the mandate. But I don't know if it's semantics, and I don't think it is entirely semantics. I'm not in favor of making it mask optional as much as making it mask recommended, but being against the mandate. I think the mandate is ended, but I don't want to make it considered like it's mask optional, because I am concerned about, or I guess I don't have the confidence that many of these people in their letters were saying that this is going to end all of our mental health challenges. I agree with Dr. Merwin. Much of this comes probably from adults, but we're going to have still people. Now we're going to have students who are going to be concerned about we're going to have teachers who are going to be concerned about the spread of it. So the mental health problems, we're not out of the woods yet with this virus. At the same time, I'm concerned. I really like the procedures or the protocol that we set up. I really like that because it does allow us to have a way to, again, get masks back on people if we have to do that. And let's hope and pray that we don't. And, hopefully science and advances in medicine will get us through that. But I think it is good to have that down there. But I do like the fact that it says masks are recommended. It's not masks are optional. And I also want to I think we need to follow up not only with the COVID protocols each month and the idea that we're going to follow the COVID-19 protocols of Dane County, but I think we have to follow up and see, are we having problems with people who are, not respecting individuals who want to continue to wear masks? And I think that's something that I'm hoping that we'll hear good news. And I think McFarland's really capable of that, but I am concerned about the fact that there could be the potential for, students or teachers feeling pressured or being bullied or whatever you want to call it, because they want to wear masks. And I think that's something we have to follow up, and we should follow up each month.
Bruce,
So, thanks.
could I interject real quick? Based on what you just said, I know I had the same concerns, and I'm wondering if maybe we could just take a slight zigzag here and ask the principals from each school to kind of give us an idea if they are hearing about instances of this, for lack of a better word, mask bullying. Would that be all right? Thank you. Any principals out there care to start in?
I'm happy to go.
Okay, thanks, Aaron.
We really, since we've been required to wear masks, we really haven't heard of any, one being bullied for wearing a mask. So, we just haven't had that opportunity, at least at the middle level. I'm guessing that's probably the case in other buildings. I do anticipate that's a possibility. I also know that there's, times where a student might say something to another student about, please put your mask up or something, and they might get a little, don't, mind your own business or something like that. But we haven't had any concerns get reported to us. That doesn't mean it's not happening though. So I think it's something we would just really need to emphasize with our students, and they really respond well. Just like respect everybody's right to do what's right for them. And I really think our students will be fine with that, but we will address any concerns that come to us of any bullying in either way.
Yeah, I suspect that you're correct, that, if we're going to see that, we'll see it when mask mandate is dropped and they become optional or recommended. And there are, a number of students that are going to continue to wear it. Oh, there we go. Hello. And then there's going to be students that will not want to. So that, as you say, you're gonna keep a guard up and make sure that does not become an issue. Appreciate it. Corey or Greg, anybody out there?
Yeah, similarly, have not heard anything because, again, we've had the mask required the whole time. I guess the one thing I would add is that the one consideration is kind of the going both ways, right? If somebody feels strongly about wearing masks or not wearing a mask, I think it's a consideration to just say, hey, we need to respect everyone. And I know we had that same message to students at the beginning of the school year when we, because remember when the kids are outdoors, that's been kind of the motto is they're recommended, but not required. And so that was our discussion with our students starting day one was, hey, if you see somebody outside, they have their mask on, we're going to respect that. If they don't, we respect that too. So we would continue with that same motto.
Thanks very much, Corey. Greg, are you out there?
Hey, good evening. To the question of have any instances of bullying regarding mask wearing come our way at CPS, the answer would be no. Similarly, at other schools, we would take any instance of bullying very seriously and follow up on every report that we do have. We haven't had any when it comes to mask wearing, with masks being required except for at recess, for example, recess being that kind of consistent opportunity where some kids have masks on, some don't. I think masks are just kind of a way of life at this point, and people are used to wearing them. at recess, used to not wearing them if they don't want to, wearing them if they do want to. I think that would just translate over to the entire school day if we go to either a mask optional or a mask recommended status. I don't anticipate bullying about choice to wear a mask or not to wear a mask being kind of a barrier to moving forward if that's the decision that the board makes.
All right, thank you very much, Greg. Jeff, you
Yeah,
got any ideas on this?
Yeah, I would add that there's been speculation either side of if there's going to be conflict of people who support the mask or not wearing a mask. But the reality is we anticipated this back in November and had created a video that's talked to our students. And the primary message that we had sent was to respect each other and their choices. And I think our student body has done a pretty good job of demonstrating that for the last year and a half, 2 years. I'm not naive enough to think there won't be some things happen, and we'll be very diligent and pursue that and deal with it as we may need to. But I feel pretty confident our student body will be respectful.
Thanks very much, Jeff. I appreciate it. Bruce, thank you for allowing me to interrupt you there. You can pick up where you left off if you'd like.
I think I've said everything I need to say. Thank you, Greg.
All right,
Craig.
thank you very much, Bruce. Kate, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I do have a couple questions. I am in support of mask recommended or mask optional, but where I question which way to go is the grid that Dr. Anderson sent out and the parameters that were established. So I guess my first question is, as of now, where would our schools fall on that grid that you sent out, Dr. Anderson?
Well, I'm going to let Lauren talk most of the time because she's a much better expert at this, but in my last discussions with her, we would be mask strongly encouraged and recommended in each of our buildings with the current case counts.
So Kate, when we looked at those numbers, and Melissa and I worked together to develop them, we went off the Jefferson School District model. So we used kind of their numbers, and then we worked a little bit backwards. So we looked at January where we knew our case count was really high to see if we would be masking in January. And indeed, a couple of those weeks, we were masking at all of our schools. And I don't know, Melissa, I guess I'm going to look to you. Right now, with our current numbers, I don't believe we'd be masking at any of our buildings.
It would be in that far left green recommended but not required column with our current numbers.
Are we comfortably, under the number that we need to see in order to go back to a mask mandate?
Yes, if I'm not sure I understand the question, Craig, but
I'm just saying, if our benchmark is 14 cases, but we have 12 or 13, are we in that situation anywhere where we're just under the amount that is going to necessitate going back to masks?
No, I believe we are kind of like Melissa said, in that far left column. So there's a middle column that's kind of we would highly recommend you mask. So right now we're not even in the middle section of that grid.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Our numbers have been in that green area since the beginning, second week of February. So for the last 2 weeks solidly, we've been, if that system were in place, we'd be in that green far left column.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Kate?
Okay. No, I mean, whether we choose to follow a grid or choose to go, masks optional, I'm okay with either.
Okay. Arlen?
Well, I tell you the truth, I think there's a host of information out there, and some of this information I don't think we get all through the TV and the radio on the networks, and I've been listening to some that are outside of that are people are learning from and listening to, and it gets kind of simple to me in some ways, how I look at it anyway. Yeah, this is a virus, and I think people need to have their choice on whether they have their family or how they handle their masks. I think we're at that. We've gone through quite a push on it. Is it going to go up and down? It can vary a little bit, but I think it's up to people's choice. And I know that there's a lot of things that factor into this. One thing is, if you do have a condition that you're more vulnerable or you're older and are different things like that, there's a lot of things that factor into it, which is normal in life. And so for the schools, I think the parent, I think we should really respect their call if they want to, have the kids with masks, or if they don't want to go with the mask. I think it's just time. And I think in all the time that we've had here, a lot of people have got it and they got their immunities. You have people that are more conscious of what they're eating, because it's just like, I'm a farmer, and if you feed good quality and food consumption, you have good, healthy animals. Well, same thing with people. And you need to, eat good stuff to keep healthy bodies and healthy minds. And I'm to the point now where, I put my faith in a lot of stuff, but then I start questioning when I hear other opinions that are verified equally by some other people too. And I understand that this is not something that can be one way or the other. And I think it's time, and we've had parents talking about this. We have other schools all out of our county, which I know they don't have as many people in their counties as we do. But I work with people from other counties. I see a lot of different things. And I think it's just time to leave it as you can if you want to, and you don't if you don't. And this, I think right now, I think we're at a place we can do that. That's my opinion. I know it might seem kind of wishy-washy, but I think really for all that's been entitled, and we've all gone through so far, I think it's time to let people make their call. And I respect the staff, and if they want to wear, and wear masks and that's fine. That's good. And as our buildings, we rotate, we clean the air, we clean everything really well. It's a good facility, and so I think we're okay to just let it go up to the parents and let them make their calls on their family. They're the ultimate one that's responsible also. That's my opinion.
Thanks very much, Arlen. Thank you very much. Christine.
Thanks. Can I ask a couple of questions again? Thinking a little bit about the consequences of our choices, of our decision tonight. Can I address the principals again with a different question, which is a little less focused on, bullying with masks or not, just the general consequences for your staff and students to go to mask optional. I mean, we highlighted one specific thing about that, generally a reaction to that. And then Lauren, I'm going to give you a heads up because I kind of would like to know the consequences of us going into this criteria-based one. So if you could give that some thought and maybe respond afterwards, the consequences on you and the health service staff if we were to go with that model. Thank you. And I don't know who wants to start as far as principals go. You're all on the screen so I can see you.
Jeff, why don't you start first?
Thanks.
I guess I'd ask you to clarify your question again. What are the consequences if we do go mask optional?
Yeah, so we're not in the schools, I am with Mike, of course, but what are some of your thoughts about the mask optional? What would be some of the consequences on your building, on the teachers, on the students? Just things that we don't think about is what I'm looking for.
I think you're going to have some apprehensions of some staff members who are concerned, some students who may be concerned, and trying to protect their right to make sure they can maintain distance in the classroom, make sure our staff can keep their distance that they want to and feel safe, and help our students do the same thing. And we talked about that in a video we're going to send to students as well. So I think some of those personal comforts are going to be an issue, and we'll have to work together to make that work. My bigger concern, probably the flip side of not going, I think the enforcement of a mask rule will be very, very, very difficult. And I think that's probably my bigger concern, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Aaron, you like to go next?
Yes, I think Jeff said it pretty well. I think once the mandate expires, it's particularly in grades 6 through 12, we will certainly get some pushback from our students wanting to have some choice. But we definitely have some students and some staff members that will be anxious and nervous, and watching very closely our case counts to make sure that this doesn't increase things. All of this, though, the unmasked is contingent upon contact tracing not being in a part of the process, because if we were to contact trace unmasked, that's a 6-foot distance, and that just wouldn't work. We don't have the capacity to do that. So, you know, there will be some families, some have already reached out, you know, probably reached out to you, certainly have reached out to us, sharing their concern. And we do have some students that are also concerned for their own welfare if there wasn't masks. But I think Jeff is right that we probably have a lot more people that are very ready for this to end.
Corey?
Yeah, echo a lot of the things that were mentioned already by Jeff and Aaron. The only thing I guess I'd add additionally is it's another change, right? So we think about a lot of the different phases that we've gone in throughout, you know, the last couple of years. Anytime we make a change, it's like creating a whole set of new social norms. So that's just gonna, like I think Jeff had talked about, you know, some students or staff who, you know, depending on their situation, whether it's them, their health, somebody at home. So just kind of going through all of that, and then, you know, we'll have to be really thoughtful about how we're teaching those behaviors. Because like I said, I would equate it to kind of like new social norms that we're going to have to adjust to.
Constant adjustment. We've become accustomed to adjustment, unfortunately. Greg, have you got anything?
I don't have anything much more or better to say than the other principals so far. It would kind of similarly acknowledge that when it comes to, you know, comfort or discomfort with wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, there is a continuum, and we have it all with students, staff, and families. When you say consequences of if we go mask optional or mask recommended, there are going to be people, I think fair enough, that will be uncomfortable with that decision, thinking about their unique needs of themselves or their child or their family. But then on the other end, there are people who, you know, will be very uncomfortable if we stick with a mask mandate or even the tiered options for having masks in place, with especially PHMDC ending their mask mandates and then wondering, you know, when are we going to follow PHMDC, when are we not? So there will be, I guess, consequences in my mind is a big word. There will be kind of thoughts to consider on each end, whether we go with continuing the mask, whether we don't, or whether we have a tiered option. But I think it was Corey, you just said this, we're used to change. I think we're used to, you know, kind of acknowledging when that change happens and supporting families who are comfortable and not comfortable with it and working through it together.
Thank you very much, guys. Christine? Further?
Well, so thank you all. Those are things that I had not considered, and that's exactly the type of information I was looking for. Lauren, what are your thoughts on that, the criteria based, and how would that affect, what would be or consequences? I'm trying to think of a different word. What would happen if we went that way? Talk us through.
Sure. So we'll still be required as a district to submit all of our positive cases to public health. So that requirement isn't going away. So what happens, right? As a student receives notification that they have tested positive for COVID, they let us know. We then, right now are not contact tracing, but are still submitting that child's name or the staff's name to public health. That is a requirement that we have. So really our case count numbers, we track regardless. That will be something that we track, and we track it by building and really by classroom. And that's how we know if we need to close a classroom. So that piece, the tracking will continue because we've always done it. One of the things that I think will be hard with that chart will be kind of that fluctuation between, okay, well, we're masking this week, but we're not masking next week. Because you could have a change of masking from one week to another, which that adjustment may be challenging to enforce with teachers, with students, just because we're not going to be in the habit of always wearing a mask. And it may be hard to kind of wrap our heads around, well, at 15 cases, it's mask optional, but at 16 cases, masks are required. And kind of just one case could push you right into masking, which I think may be a challenge for our buildings. Does that help, Christine?
Yes, yep, that helps a lot. So it makes me think that, are we using the right criteria? I mean, because, well, will classrooms potentially be shut with numbers of cases in this? I'm trying to figure out what's going to remain and what's going to change as far as protocols.
So we still have our reverse metrics, right? So that's kind of a separate document that I think the board voted on in October of 2020, where we analyze the number of cases. We see if we can kind of figure out if there is, quote unquote, an outbreak in a classroom, and then adjust, because we still want our kids to be safe. We will still analyze those numbers, right? If we would suddenly see we have 4, 5, 6, 7 cases within a short period of time in that classroom, we're still going to look at that and go, okay, what do we need to do? What are our next steps? So I think that is a little bit different than just at this point saying we're going to wear a mask or we're not going to wear a mask.
Gotcha. Okay. And what about students and staff who test positive when they come back? I mean, will that remain the same then?
Yes, so public health's guidance to us is still students can return on day 6, or staff. Anyone who's tested positive can return on day 6, but would need to mask from day 6 through 10. So that criteria is still outlined by public health.
So in that case, even though someone wants it to be optional, it's actually mandated for them?
Yes, for the individuals who test positive.
Unless they want to stay at home, and they could stay home and finish their quarantine at home if they didn't want to wear a mask at school.
Mm-hmm. So thank you all. I just feel like I needed a little more information. So my thoughts do go to a number of things that were said, another number of letters that we get, a number of emails that we get, contacts that we get asking for things to either remain the same or change in this case. I want to echo what Bruce said, because I think he's spot on, and certainly Dr. Merwin said it too. I mean, the idea of removing masks for some people is extremely anxiety producing, and for kids who have anxiety or even OCD or a germ phobia, what we're asking them to do is analogous to walking into a room full of spiders if they're an arachnophobe. So that whole thought of this solves mental health issues is not necessarily the case for all kids. And I just want to point that out, because I feel like we talk in generalities, and that when we do one thing, it helps some people, but it hurts some others. And so Bruce, thank you. I see you shaking your head, and I agree with you on that. And, and recognizing that we do have students who are immunocompromised. So we have hidden disabilities with our kids who are vulnerable, and that it is our role to protect them. Mass work. There's no randomized controlled trials, because you can't physically do a randomized controlled trial in a school. No one's going to be placed in the one where they don't get masks versus the one who does. It's just not possible. So we don't have those kind of studies, and you never will, because you physically can't do scientifically. So I feel like, how do we get to the middle ground of understanding people want to have this choice as an individual, but recognizing that it affects the community. It's different than a seatbelt. Someone who is unmasked can come in, give COVID to someone who is unmasked, and so on and so on. And here we are again. So I'm leaning more towards a criteria-based one, so things don't get out of control, especially with the new variant on the way. But I would be happy to consider a different type of criteria if it would work better for the district. And that's why I was asking the questions. So that's my thought right this second.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Greg?
I
Greg?
think I'm of the opinion that the time has come. We have been steadfast in aligning ourselves with public health, Dane County, Madison throughout the pandemic. There are circumstances and situations that certainly preclude our district from defying public health, Madison, Dane County issued mandates. It simply isn't as easy as just deciding that we're going to go mask optional until such a time that Madison Public Health Dane County does indeed drop their mask mandate. I am in favor of staying aligned with Madison Dane County Public Health in terms of not having a mask mandate, but having a mask highly recommended or recommended as opposed to a mandate. I agree with Dr. Merwin and Christine in that I think you're offering out false hope if you're advocating that removing the masks are going to somehow magically cure all the mental health issues that have come about throughout this period. There are certainly circumstances that the mask was the problem, but I hear as much that the kids have become used to these masks. What I hear from adults and parents is different than what I hear from the kids themselves. And I've spoken to kids of all ages. I am in favor of removing the mask mandate, however, and making mask recommended, mask optional, the new protocol for our school district here in McFarland. As far as the criteria-based, I would probably defer to Lauren and Melissa and Dr. Merwin to offer up opinions on the criteria-based as opposed more, yeah, we're going to continue to monitor it. I understand the difficulties with the criteria-based in that once you get right up snug against that number, then if we have one more case, that's going to trip to put masks back on again. I don't think that'll work. I just think that the push back against that would be significant. So I'm going to leave it that I am of the opinion we should go to mask recommended, mask optional in all of our school buildings, conditional upon the Dane County Public Health, Dane County Madison Public Health dropping of their mask mandate. And I would defer to Lauren, Melissa, and Dr. Merwin on how effective they think the criteria-based standards would be should we enact those. Dr. Merwin? Maybe not still with us. Bruce?
Yeah, I just, I really like the MSD masking criteria that Lauren and Melissa put together. But remember, it's based on something that was, as they mentioned, based on Jefferson High School or Jefferson School District. And they're not part of Dane County. So in a sense, they needed to have this high, the 3% or higher, the far right side, where they would make that decision that it says masks will be required or are required. I think about all we could do if we're going to maintain, and that's why I asked that question. We're still following Dane County. It would seem to me that that pink or that right side there, the 3% or higher, at that point, I think we would contact Dane County, the health, and say, what should we do? And I think otherwise we're going off on our own, and I don't think we want to do that.
I'm
But
sure we don't want to do that.
right, I think that would be a nightmare. So my feeling is that's the only thing that I would suggest that we have to change, because they didn't have a Dane County to follow.
Correct.
And we do. So
I agree. I think that if things get bad again, we know that the health department is going to step in. I think it's hard. I like the criteria, but at the same time, you've got kids, because we're separating the masking by schools. So you've got people who have kids in 3 schools. What if one school is masking, 2 aren't, but you've got, 4 kids, and it gets complicated. Again, I'm not saying it wouldn't work. I like seeing the numbers and making that clear, but at the same time, I agree with you, Bruce, that, we should revisit these things on a monthly basis. And I think that the health department here in Dane County would likely step in if things got worse. However, if we decide to go to a mask recommended option, I think it needs to be said, and it needs to be clear that there's a potential that masks could be put back on kids. And I want parents to understand that we just don't know what the future holds. And even if we move to this, just know that at some point, if we had another variant, we had a lot of spread, we could ask for masks to be worn, and we'd hope that the community would support that.
Well said. Well said, Kate. I would agree 100% with that. Melissa, you have any opinion on the criteria as opposed to maybe not using set numbers?
Yeah, I think Kate really said what I was thinking, which is our history with Public Health Madison Dane County has been, they have been quite conservative with their guidance and recommendations. And I think if we did adopt the criteria that Dr. Anderson put forward to the board, that before we got to that far right red area, that public health would likely have already reinstated a mandate at that point. That would be my guess. It is a guess, I don't know, but I think that would be the case based on what we've seen from the county in the past. So if we went to a mass recommended as opposed to having those numbers, it wouldn't mean that we couldn't have another vote. Like, we could have another vote to change that statement if more information came out. But the criteria does feel nice because it feels like, okay, we have a plan. If things are starting to get bad, that we would put masks back on, and here's exactly when we could do it. Like, that feels good. However, without it, we still could do it, and it would give us more flexibility to make those changes and decisions as we learn more about different variants that might come, or we learn more about the impact of the decision as we go forward.
Thank you.
I do want, Craig, can I just say one thing?
Certainly.
About masking? We will still be required to have our kids mask on the bus, as that is a federal mandate until the middle of March. So we may go mask optional recommended in schools, but kids will still need to mask on the bus if they take the bus until about mid-March.
Thank you. I was not aware of that piece of the public health updated requirements.
The bus is a federal mandate.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, I would agree. I think across the board that we need to be very, very clear that regardless of us going to a mask recommended, mask optional protocol, there is always the possibility of going back to masks. And I'm sure the pushback would be significant were that to happen. But I think it's our responsibility to the community, the school, and the students to do whatever we can based on the best information we have to keep our kids and our staff and our teachers and our administrators safe and healthy. Christine.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with what everyone's saying, and I really appreciate people's reaction to the pros and cons, because sometimes I don't think we explore those enough. One of the things that I think that if we move forward in this way, that I'd like us to encourage or do differently is a better job of communicating. One of the things I've appreciated about Dr. Anderson is you tell him something and something happens and everyone knows it by 10 minutes later. I mean, you're so good at communicating, and people know when things are happening right away. But I think we need to message things, or my opinion is we need to message things differently. There is a lot of rhetoric out there that is completely false. And we're a learning environment. I feel like this is a teachable moment for everyone. And besides saying things like, there is a potential for us to have to go back to masks, whether we have criteria or not, to, these are the ways that you can protect yourself, get N95s, just do a better job, because if we're going to say masks recommended, we are opening up a lot of vulnerabilities for people. And I think it's our responsibility to share the science and the data that we know. That would be one thing that I would encourage us, regardless of whatever direction we go.
Agreed. Hopefully this isn't showing off my ignorance, but how is Dane County Public Health going to address it? Is there any distancing protocol that goes along with the mask recommended optional, or is that by the way as well? Anybody that could answer that, please do. Maybe nobody can.
I don't believe they changed the recommendation on distancing. So I think that when you are masked, I think it's still at 3 feet. And when you're unmasked, it's at 6 feet. It's just not feasible for us to be able to follow the 6 feet if we're unmasked, because we don't have the space to do that.
Correct. Would we go to a 3-foot distance in that case, or would we just have, whatever is reasonable based on, the circumstances in the specific classroom?
I think we're going to, use what we think is going to be workable in each of our buildings because of the layouts of each of our buildings. Some, at lunch, some of the spacing will stay the same. So like the high school has seats marked off. They have additional seating, as is the middle school. The Wabisa and Conrad Elvium, have a little more, less leeway, especially at lunch. So I think we will use the spacing that we've been using, because I don't know that we have the capacity to space at a greater distance.
Yeah, I know we don't have the capacity to space 6 feet. I mean, that was an issue, quite a ways back that we addressed by class size. Okay, so maybe we should talk a little bit about that. Do we include in our motion when we decide when we do make a decision on this, do we include any verbiage or language about distancing, or do we just continue as we have done and basically, to my thinking, we'll do the best we can? Is Dane County Health?
Well, my recommendation would not be to include anything on distancing. I think if you wanted to, from listening to conversation, if you wanted to go to masking strongly encouraged and recommended, but not mandated, and then take a look at when we do reach certain cases, that we would either work directly with Public Health Medicine Dane County to get their input on whether or not they felt we were at a level that would require different action, or bring it up at a board meeting. I think if you wanted to give yourself more flexibility, that would be one way to do that.
I agree. Any other discussion?
Well, the only other thing is 4K. So I think, as Dr. Anderson had already talked about, if we do decide to go this route, we should leave 4K up to the daycares and how they're handling masking requirements at the daycares.
I would agree. They've handled that responsibility since day one, as far as I know, without significant incident. So I would agree with that as well. If there is no more discussion, I think I've got a potential motion in front of me, but it includes a piece on going to the criteria presented us by the administration. Do we want to strike that out of the motion? I would ask each of you to give me your opinion on that. Kate, as long as you're up.
Well, I think we were presented multiple options. So I think we really need to come to a conclusion on which option would be best, whether it just be mask strongly recommended or we follow the grid. So I guess before we make a motion, does anyone have any more feedback on or input on the grid that Dr. Anderson has submitted?
I would say my only input would be that while you get kind of warm and fuzzy with criteria, meaning that there are specific numbers out there, when you reach that number, then we do this. I just feel like that locks us into a position that maybe we don't want to make. Christine, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm hearing the negatives of that. So I was kind of thinking about better, once again, going back to better communication. So a building has so many cases, a letter goes out and says, hey, we're starting to hit a number we're worried about, please encourage, or if people aren't, please do so. I feel like maybe we have to take a role in prevention in a way that we didn't have to before, because we had the mandate. So that was helpful. But to keep people safer the best that we can, if we're not going to use a strict number, maybe the number is out there for us, and that's where we, communicate with folks.
Sure.
I'm looking for a middle ground here, knowing that maybe the criteria is not the best way to go, but yet maybe it's a soft criteria where we know what the numbers are, we publicize those, and this is where, we're going to say, hey, we've got these cases and we need you to be aware of it.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't want to be making more work for an already overburdened staff, believe me.
I understand that as well. Lauren, are you confident enough that Dane County Public Health would indeed step in before we got to the point where we felt it was necessary to go back to masks?
Yes, I am. I don't necessarily think the grid or the criteria is going to be our best bet, and I do think public health will step in.
Melissa, you feel the same?
I agree with Lauren.
Okay. Bruce? Any change in your opinion?
No, yeah, I agree with everything everyone's saying. And I just kind of wrote down.
You have a motion for us?
I follow exactly what you're saying, Craig. And I just put down something to the effect of, maybe we're not ready to be there, but you guys can ponder this. Maybe I'm way off, but I moved to drop the mask mandate inside our school buildings once Dane County mask mandate expires on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. And we will continue to follow what is it? Public Health, Madison-Dane County guidance, while continuing to look at our own COVID data and protocols each month. I mean, is that kind of what we're doing?
I think that in a nutshell is where we are right now. If anyone disagrees with that, will you please speak up? Because I kind of like the way that was put together.
The only thing I'd be careful about is I agree we should be looking at the health department, but I don't know exactly what their recommendations are for every specific thing. So, you know, if they're recommending unmasked people stay 6 feet apart, that's not something that we're able to follow. So I would be really careful about saying, like, we can, in that motion, we can say, we'll look to PHMDC for guidance, but I don't know. I don't know that we should say we will follow.
Okay.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I think that's good. And I'll change that. in
I
mine.
agree with that too.
Who was that?
I also agree with that.
Harlan. Okay, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion before I ask Bruce to make his motion? If there's nothing out there, Bruce, if you'd like to make a motion, please do.
Okay, you guys, because I'm never very confident in my own writing ability. So here we go.
Oh, we'll let you know.
I'm sure you will. I move to drop the mask mandate inside our school buildings once the Dane County mask mandate expires on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. We will continue to look to PHMDC for guidance while continuing to follow our own COVID data and protocols each month.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Harlan? Additional discussion? Okay, hearing none.
Wait, I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
It doesn't say that we're saying masks are recommended. It feels a little too vague right now. Because it's leaving it open for, we're just dropping it. So I'm wondering if in the motion that we need to say more.
And I'm glad you said that, Christine, because I know it's semantics, but there's a difference between mask recommended and mask optional. There's something that just kind of, I think we need to address, and it's probably semantics, but.
Well, there seems to be a distinction there to my thinking as well. Which I think would preclude you from saying optional and recommended. It seems to me it's got to be one or the other. Masks optional still leaves the choice, in my view, to the parents and the students. So I think maybe, at least in my opinion, masks recommended is a better term than masks optional. Any thoughts?
I agree.
Anybody have any problem with it? Okay. Should we try again, Bruce?
Yeah, let me try that. So I'll just insert that. I move to drop the mask mandate inside our school buildings once the Dane County mask mandate expires on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. And we will recommend let's see, how do I say that? We will turn or go to a mask recommended policy and still look to PHMDC for guidance while continuing to follow our own COVID data and protocols each month.
That better?
I don't know.
I'm asking the others. Christine,
So
does that address the issue you were concerned with?
Yeah, I think so. It's always hard. I want to see it in writing, you know.
I know.
It was all the words were great, and I think they were strung together correctly, but I'd like to see
Yeah, That's easiest.
I think Arlen wanted to say something.
Arlen?
Well, is that emphasizing more to wear masks and have people, are they gonna get confused that they're recommended, or they do have an option? Is it spelled out easy enough that they know that they can do what they choose is right? Or
believe-
are they gonna be second guessing themselves?
I don't think so. I think there's enough clarity. I think mask recommended is completely different than what we have had up to this point. I personally believe it is clear enough, Arlen. I think I would prefer that we went with masks recommended as opposed to optional. Just so I think our staff, students, administrators understand that we as a board are concerned, with safety as much as we always have been. In my opinion, mask recommended is a better way of describing what we're after than masks optional. And it may be-
And I'll try Arlen, I'll try to stress that in my communications. So I'll, depending on what the board passes tonight, I'll work up something in the morning and send it to the board to make sure it captures the, the message you wanted to convey.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
Very
Anderson.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Anything else from the board? If not, I'm going to have Bruce read his motion one more time and we will proceed with a second and a vote.
All right, I move to drop the mask mandate. I think that takes care of what you're saying, Arlen. So I move to drop the mask mandate inside our school buildings once the Dane County mask mandate expires on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. And we will adopt a mask recommended policy and look to PHMDC for guidance while continuing to look at our own data and protocols or COVID protocols each month.
That works for me. Anyone else have any changes they'd like to make? Suggestions? If not, I would look for a second.
I'll second.
Arlen, second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, everyone. Great job. Moving on. Action on McFarland High School revised Spring Start College Now program request.
All right, this is one of those that you acted on in the past. However, one of the students had one of the classes dropped that he couldn't take. So he put in another class. So basically, I'm just asking you to approve that new class. So this is one of those, I guess I would call it perfunctory. The individual has the right to do it. It's just that when you approved it the last time, one course had to be dropped, another one added.
No, that should be fine, I would think. Any other discussion?
No, I'll make the motion to approve the revised spring semester early college credit program recommendation included in our packet for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you, Christine. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Bruce. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we have action on approval of second reading and adoption of a long list of policies that we had passed along after the first reading. And so administration recommends approval of the second reading and adoption of the attached policies. Any discussion?
Well, just to remind everybody, these are what Neola brings to us. They have discussions with their attorneys, and as legal climate changes, things that they recommend that we should updating our policies. So most of it is that, so to keep our policies continually updated with what's going on. We haven't had any suggested changes since the last meeting, so I hope that you adopt these, and then we'll put them in our update our policies.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I went through them. I like the changes that they made. I like that they're using they instead of he/she. So I think it's some good stuff. Yeah.
Okay. I'll make the motion. I move to accept the revised board policies as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And I think that might very well bring us up to looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Christine,
I'll second.
Arlen,
Yep.
we very rarely have discussion on this. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
From.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We are adjourned at 9:16 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, have a good evening, everyone.